Hello, my students. I miss you all very much, and I wish that I could be teaching you about French colonialism in Algeria in person, but here's the next best thing. I'm going to give you a little lecture, 5 or 6 minutes, hopefully, and then at the end there is a couple questions that I would like you to answer on Google Classroom. So here we go. Okay, we're going to be talking about Algeria. So in the 1830s, the French colonized Algeria. So Algeria is right here. It's one of the biggest countries in Africa. And then France is, if I had a map of Europe, it'd be like right about here. So in the 1830s, the French came down to Africa and they took over a whole lot of places, Algeria, one of them. Remember, this was a time when a lot of European countries were taking over Africa. Remember, Britain took over pretty much almost all of this. And France took over pretty much all of this. Mean King Leopold from Belgium took over Congo. So almost all of Africa was colonized by European powers in the 1800s. And France was one of those powers. So France took over Algeria. So we're going to be studying Algeria as just a case study, an example of what happened to one country in Africa. All right. Algeria, I have some pictures from Algeria. The southern Algeria is mostly Sahara Desert, hence this picture right here. But in the north, Algeria has a lot of big cities, and those are the other pictures you see today, are modern day cities in Algeria. And here's some more pictures of Algeria. It looks beautiful. We should all go after coronavirus is over. Okay. So, in the 1830s, France invaded Algeria. Remember, this was a time when Europeans had machine guns and most Africans didn't. So Europeans took advantage of that and took over a lot of places in Africa. And a settler colony, in this case, is an African country, Algeria in this case, and with a large population of European settlers, these being French. And it was those French settlers that had all the political power. So France comes to Algeria, takes over Algeria, and says, all right, you Algerians now belong to France. This is a French colony. We are going to control you. So then they sent a whole bunch of French people to live in and control Algeria. So that's the picture you see here, is some French folks coming in on boats to their new colony of Algeria. So you see a painting of Algeria in the background, but the flags are French. Right? So you have French folks coming into Algeria ready to control and colonize the place. And of course, this is not very good for Algerians at all. All right, the French goal was to force or convince Algerians to assimilate to French culture. So assimilation is when one culture becomes more like another culture. Now, assimilation is not always bad. But it certainly can be. Okay? I'm sure we have all assimilated to things before. For example, when I moved to Las Vegas, I assimilated and I started gambling, which I'd never done before or since. Right? I assimilated to that culture by gambling. Right? If you move to New Orleans, you assimilate by eating delicious New Orleans food. Right? So it's very common to assimilate to new places. A lot of your families and ancestors, almost all of our ancestors, at one point assimilated to the United States or moved to the United States and assimilated by learning English and U.S. customs, right? So assimilation is when one culture becomes more like another culture. Now, it's one thing if you choose to assimilate, like a lot of folks chose to move to another country and assimilate to that country. Algerians did not choose that. French people came to Algeria and said, all right, we're here, become French, right? So this is a forced assimilation. All right, and we have a couple political cartoons over here that you can read. So assimilation, when one culture becomes more like another culture. Not always a bad thing, but not always a good thing. Sometimes if you choose to assimilate, sometimes that's okay, sometimes not. But if you force somebody to assimilate, that's usually a bad thing. And that's what the French did. All right, a little reminder about culture. I know that you guys all know what culture is. but it's the language, religion, and customs of yourself, usually your family and your community. So I just want to talk about a couple different aspects of culture that changed in Algeria. The most obvious today is language. I took a French class a couple years ago from Edmonds Community College, and my teacher was actually Algerian. And she spoke French because almost everyone in Algeria speaks French, and that is because of French influence. Okay? So even though the French invaded Algeria in 1830, their influence is still there. So it is still a French-speaking country. So my professor spoke several languages, but French was her native language. So language. Okay? Another big one is religion. And religion is usually one of those aspects of culture that people are, understandably, very, very, very reluctant to give up. And most people in Algeria were absolutely not willing to give up their religion. Most folks in Algeria were and still are Muslim, and most French folks were some form of Christians. Okay? And the French who came to Algeria really wanted Algerians to give up their Islamic religion, to give up being Muslim, to give up Muslim traditions, and that didn't happen. So the French tried to push the issue. A lot of French said, give up Islam, and the Algerians are like, no, we're not going to give up our language, or we're not going to give up our religion. So then the French started tying citizenship to religion. The French would say, if you want to be a French citizen, then you have to give up parts of your religion. You have to give up Islamic law. You have to give up some of your beliefs. And most Algerians said, no thanks, we don't want to give up our religion. We just won't be French citizens. But the thing is, with citizenship comes a lot of protections and benefits. So if you wanted to have a good job, if you wanted to work for the government, if you wanted to have a decent piece of land, if you wanted to have the benefits of citizenship, then you had to give up your religion. And most people in Algeria still chose not to do that. But it was one way that the French tried to control the Algerians. Another way the French tried to control the Algerians is through education. Education is a really great way to control people. I'm controlling you right now. So a lot of times in Algeria, the teachers were French, and they would teach French customs to their Algerian students. And that was one way which a lot of Algerian kiddos started to lose their language because their teachers were teaching them French. So they would lose their language, and especially writing skills in their language. Okay, so citizenship. All right, of course the Algerians did not like all this very much, and they resisted, and they resisted, and they resisted. And that's what we're going to spend a lot of time talking about, resistance movements in Algeria and in other places in Africa. So a lot of Algerians would organize and resist against the French. So again, resistance, our definition here, is to organize and protest against a powerful force. And all over Africa, people were resisting European control and power and European colonialism. Oh, my face is blocking your definition. Sorry. So a lot of these resistance fighters are nationalists. Remember, nationalism is to love your country. And nationalists are people who are willing to fight for and love their country. These are pictures of some modern nationalists in Algeria. These are modern pictures. A lot of them cheering for Algerian soccer teams, it looks like. But back in the day, in like the 1930s and the 1940s, Algerian nationalism got to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And pretty soon fights broke out. Okay? Oh, we're not ready for independence yet. Oh well. All right. In 1945, the day World War II ended, actually, there was a big fight in Algeria. A bunch of Algerians resisted the French there. But the big war came in 1954. So in 1954, the Algerian nationalists all got together, and these are some leaders of the Algerian nationalist movement. They got together and they fought a war against the French. So this fighting lasted all the way until 1962. So this really long war between the Algerians and the French. And the Algerians won the war and became independent. So the Algerian country became its own independent nation in 1962, free from French control. So now Algerians are free to choose their own rules. They don't have to follow the French rules anymore. They're not a French colony anymore. All right, just to kind of show that this was happening all over Africa, right in the middle of this French-Algerian War, the All-African Peoples Conference happened, and over 300 African leaders met to discuss how to free their countries from European colonialism. And here's some pictures from this meeting. If you can see right here, it says, "Hands off Africa. Africa must be free." So a whole bunch of Africans got together and thought of the best ways to kick Europeans off of their continent, and this was successful. So in the next coming weeks, we are going to study Algeria, and then we'll branch out and study some speeches from a lot of these African leaders, and hear what they had to say about European colonialism and how damaging it was to their country. All right. So what I would like you lovely people to do, it's on this slide. If you could post your answer to these 3 questions. It says the questions below. It should mean like these questions right here. They're not below. Anyways, post your answer to these questions in Google Classroom by Tuesday night. So I think I said like Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. Go ahead and post your answer to those questions. Please do respond to each question for a total of 5 sentences. 5 sentences. Okay, so you are going to answer these questions. How did the French colonize Algeria and control Algerians? How have you ever assimilated to a new culture or a new situation? And this can be silly. Remember, I talked about how I assimilated to life in Las Vegas by gambling, right? Does not have to be serious. And then next, how did Algerians resist French colonization? All right, so you're going to write 5 sentences, post them right in Google Classroom so everyone can see your answers. Then what I would like you to do is on Wednesday or Thursday, go back and read everyone else's answers and choose one person to respond to. So respond to somebody else's comment. And please make your response at least 3 sentences by Thursday night. Then on Friday, I will grade the whole thing. I will also be in your comments, and I'll be responding to your 5 sentences as well. Okay? And then on Friday, I'll grade that, and then you can see your grade in cumulative gradebook. Okay, cool. I will talk to you later. Bye.